Hearts run right to the end. People come on, you don't need to be scared. Cause you're gonna love again.
Aloha and welcome to another episode of the Haider Rifaat Show Season 9 Specials. I'm your host Haider Rifaat, and today I have been joined by another special guest. Her name is Kaelyn Howard. She is of Afro-Filipino descent. She's a music educator. She's a classical singer. She's pursuing her master's degree in Ethnomusicology from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She's also affiliated with the East West Center, and I'm really happy to have her on my show. Please welcome Kaelyn Howard. Kaelyn, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure having you on my show. So first and foremost, take us back in time. What really drew you to music? Were you always surrounded by a culture where having family members around you play different instruments, singing together, was it a norm in your family, or what was that pull or drive towards music?
Yeah, so my mom really enjoys karaoke. She is the Filipino parent, so I feel like she would always bring us to a lot of Filipino gatherings. So karaoke was just a staple everywhere we went, no matter whose home it was. As long as there was Filipino, there were Filipinos, there was a karaoke machine somewhere. And my dad always played music growing up. There was always music playing. So when it came to doing music, it was kind of more like a fun pastime. And I really took to karaoke. I mean, I didn't have a choice. My mom put the mic in my hand as soon as I could start babbling and talking. So I started to karaoke, and after that, they noticed that I was like pretty good for a kid. I was like maybe 4 or 5. And then
That's when you started to sing?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was just mimicking what I was hearing. I was singing Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, whatever my dad was playing.
Wow, that's a very young age to do that. That's
and
amazing.
It was just fun. I just really enjoyed it. And then I ended up joining my mom's church choir, and then that's where I learned how to sing. I learned how to read music. I know now what a privilege that was, because a lot of people just don't know how to read music.
Right.
So I got a lot of formal education unawarely at a really early age. And after that, I joined the middle school choir, and I loved it. I got to sing more. For me, it was still fun. It was still just a lot of joy that I felt when I was doing it. And I remember my mom actually told me to drop out of choir to do band. It was devastating. I was like, "You hate me. I can't believe you're doing this to me." And I remember just being really bitter about it, and I didn't even know what instrument I wanted to play because I didn't want to do it. I was just really upset, and I remember asking my older brother, "What instrument should I play? I don't want to do this." And he's just said, "You look like you would play flute or clarinet," and I don't even know what that means. So I ended up picking the flute, and then joining band in 7th grade and walking in and seeing the middle school choir teacher. And when I saw him, I said, "What are you doing here? This is the band room." And he said, "Kaelyn, I teach both. I teach choir and band." And then that was the pull.
Yeah.
That's
and
when
he
I got
was
pulled.
already your instructor before?
For choir.
For choir.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he was the choir
there was a
teacher.
sense of comfort and familiarity over there.
Yeah,
right?
it wasn't like I had to meet a new teacher. It wasn't like I had to build a new relationship. So him being there already was really comforting, because I came in really upset, thinking, "I don't want to do this. I just want to sing, man. All I want to do is sing." And then just because he was there, it made me want to play the flute. Yeah. So I remember I joined beginning band, and I was in a room full of students a year younger than me, but I ended up learning the flute really fast. I learned it like within a month. And he saw this gift, and he said, "Oh my gosh, you should really talk to your parents about taking lessons, because you have a lot of potential." And when I talked to my parents about it, the first thing that they registered is that they'd have to pay more money. So then they just said, "No, we already paid for the instrument. Why? This doesn't really make sense." And they didn't really understand. So I just ended up staying in the band, but not taking lessons or anything, for the rest of school. So I
see.
stayed in band. I actually ended up moving into the regular level for my age. So then I was in the intermediate class as a 7th grader. And after that, I remember that was the pull. I joined the jazz band, and I was trying to be in choir at the same time, but I couldn't really because you only have so many electives.
Right.
So I got very involved in music in middle school, and then that just carried into high school. So in high school, my freshman year, I joined marching band, and then I started marching flute, and I made it my whole identity. I just became a band kid, and I just wanted to learn to play all the instruments that were there. And I ended up joining the winter drum line. So then I was still playing an instrument during the off season because marching band is for football.
Right.
So I joined winter drum line and then kept doing it, and then I rejoined choir as soon as I had space in my schedule, and just kept
Going
and getting more involved.
Right. That's great. So I want to follow up this with your interest in music. Obviously, you're continuing that, and you're so talented in terms of your singing and whatever you're doing in terms of also pursuing your master's here. In our culture, where I'm from, South Asian culture, pursuing a career path in singing or music is sometimes kind of like comes with a little bit of cultural backlash and family backlash because it does not pay bills, you know?
Yes.
So it's more like considered not a very valuable profession. Was it something similar for you when you said like, Mom, Dad, professionally, I'm gonna be a singer or a music educator? So what was that dynamic like for you?
So I was the type of child that changed my career like every month. So I remember at one point I wanted to be a zookeeper. I really love animals.
Yeah.
And then I remember, I think I was maybe 9 or 10. And you know, you change careers so much when you're so little.
Yes.
So I told my parents I wanted to be a veterinarian. I really want to be a veterinarian. I really love animals. I loved all the pets that they allowed us to have around us. My dad always made sure that we had a dog or fish, or even, I remember at one point we had birds, and I really loved them a lot. And then when I joined my middle school band, I remember joining choir and thinking, oh, this is so much fun. And then when I joined band and then met Mr. Castor, the band and choir teacher, I thought, oh, I just want to be just like him. So then I told my parents, oh, I want to be a music teacher. And my dad said, oh, that's beautiful. And my mom said, what happened? You wanted to be a veterinarian. So she wasn't, I think she was trying to be understanding. And they kind of shrugged it off. And when I did go into college, I told them I was going to school to become a music teacher, and they understood that I wanted to go into education. The music thing, they didn't really understand, but they knew I would be teaching music. But I didn't even know what that meant because I'm the first in my family to graduate with a bachelor's degree. So when I did get into college, I started in community college. I went to Riverside City College in Southern California, and I just didn't understand why I had to take so many classes. And I learned later that's very typical for music majors.
I see. Yeah, and right now that you're doing your master's, and it's pretty amazing that you are the first in your family to kind of like hold a bachelor's degree, and now you're like doing your master's. And it's specifically in ethnomusicology. First, I want you to make that distinction between what makes ethnomusicology different than pursuing maybe just music or so on and so forth. And secondly, how important, because I did mention in my introduction that you are of Afro-Filipino descent, so how important is to have your culture and your heritage be represented in the kind of music that you're pursuing, the kind of music you want to do? Representation matters. So how much of that has been tied to your mission to be a music educator?
Yeah, so for me, when I tell people what ethnomusicology is, because generally most people just don't know, and I didn't even know what it was until I applied for the program, and when I discovered what it was, I thought, oh, this is so interesting, and this overlaps with a lot of the interests that I had at the time anyways. I actually applied for the master's program reluctantly because, well, I applied enthusiastically to this program, but before that, in my undergraduate program, my voice teacher really saw a lot of potential with my singing. And I never sought to become a performer. I really just wanted to be an educator. And I always thought that singing was fun and it was a pastime. And then in college, it became something I did for a grade. So I kind of lost the enjoyment. It felt more like something I was being measured rather than something that I derived my happiness from. So she saw a lot of potential and she really encouraged me to get a master's degree in vocal performance. And she kind of kept egging it on, and I said, fine, I'll look into it. And then I looked into it, and I just came back to her, and I said, I still don't want to do it. I'm still uninterested. But I found something called ethnomusicology. Can you tell me more about this? And she said, oh, you should look into UH. So when I discovered the program here, it really satiated my desire to learn more about Filipino music. Because in my undergraduate degree, I was already really interested in Filipino music. She was actually the first educator to show me that there was classical Filipino music. I didn't even know that existed. I think that from an American's perspective, you don't conceptualize classical music to be other than white performers. And I remember one time a previous voice teacher asked me, do you know who Jessie Norman is? And I said no. And she said, you should just look her up. And looking her up was very inspiring and encouraging to see someone who looks like my aunt singing. And it made me feel more inspired to do it. So after I applied here, I applied on a whim. I didn't really expect anything. And then I got in and I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then they offered me a full fellowship and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to move now. I can't pass this up. And I applied here to learn more specifically about Filipino music.
And your research interests, what did they particularly focus on in terms of your master's?
So here, the way that most ethnomusicology programs work is that the student or the researcher will have a research focus, and that'll probably be a geographical place. So my focus is the Philippines, but I prioritize the art songs that come out of the Philippines. So for anyone that isn't very familiar with classical literature, the way I like to explain it is art song music is something that's probably based off of a selection of poetry, and it doesn't have a specific scene or plot, but arias and lead lead is also, that's a type of German art song. An aria is a scene pulled from an opera.
I see. Okay.
So a lot of it overlaps because you use the same vocal technique for all of this kind of music, but art song music isn't derived from a storyline. It kind of stands on its own.
I got it. Okay, that's good to know. And also, I wanted to get your take on how you prepare for your performances, because a lot of thought goes into it, a lot of practice goes into it, and especially when you're doing vocal performance.
Yeah.
So how do you prepare for that? What is that preparation process like for you?
Yeah, so it depends on what the performance is. Like, for example, I just sang the national anthem at an event a few weeks ago, and for that, it's not as demanding because I'm just singing one song. I'm just singing the national anthem. And stylistically, I'm not going to have an opera voice while I'm singing that. So I always make sure for any performance to do vocal warm-ups. And I always start with closed mouth warm-ups because it really focuses on your vocal cords and just warms them up. And after that is when I start to do warm-ups with my mouth open. So then it's kind of like you're stretching your body and just getting it ready for the performance, for the game, for the exercise, whatever it is. But besides that, always get enough sleep, eat properly. I try to avoid spicy foods or dairies before I have a performance because those foods will just make it difficult to sing.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your journey towards music, how it keeps you grounded personally, because I know that I was watching your interview and you were mentioning how you lost your older brother as well. So how does he inspire you in music, and how much of that has kept you grounded where you are right now in your life?
Yeah, my older brother was always a role model to me, and that's just because he's older than me. I think I still would have looked up to him if I was older than him because he was a very passionate performer, and he really modeled to me what it looks like to be a performing artist. One of my earliest memories of, he was a dancer, so I remember one of my earliest memories of seeing him dance was at a showcase that he had at his high school, and before that, the now famous artist Tori Kelly was actually singing the national anthem at that event because his dance teacher was family friends with her family.
Wow.
And the first thing I saw was her, and I just thought, oh my gosh, who is this woman? I want to be like her. They're like similar age, and I was just seeing a young person singing and being really good at it. So there was that, and then I watched him perform, and I thought, oh my gosh, how do I get into this? And he dropped out of college. He ended up not finishing, but he never stopped dancing. So he had the same struggle, if you want to call it, of telling my parents, or our parents, I really want to take lessons to foster this gift that I've been told that I have. And they said, we can't afford that. So he just took workshop after workshop, free classes everywhere he could get them, and got to a point where he was being invited to teach at studios, and I feel like he made a full circle when he was then teaching at a studio where he wished he could have studied at in our hometown. And he started to teach classes there. And he was always very encouraging of me, and it was really difficult because our dad suffers from PTSD. He's a retired Marine. So growing up, I had a really hard time understanding why he couldn't show up to a lot of performances. I don't know that he actually attended any of Jamel's dance concerts because the loud environment just really set him off and reminded him of when he was in war. But Jamel was very persistent about showing up to see me perform. And
That's
my older brother. Yeah, Jamel. He would always come to as many performances as he could. And one of my favorite things was hearing him, especially at a marching band event, just saying like, that's my sister, and just screaming. And
being that support system.
Yeah, he was definitely that support system, so.
And he was also in the arts, like you are.
Yeah, he just understood, he knew how that felt.
How did he, if you don't mind me asking, how did he pass away?
So Jamel was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer when he was 25. And it was a really, I don't even know how to describe it. It was a really crazy experience because he was diagnosed when he was 25, and by the time it was discovered, he was already at stage 4. And he went through really intensive chemotherapy, and in just about 6 months' time, he became 95% cancer-free. So I remember he actually did something called the 100-day challenge. I don't know if that's exactly how it's called, but he would post every day just what his day was like, what he was going through, and he reached people in parts of the world that I didn't even know about, and just fostered a lot of support. A lot of people really encouraged him. He was really open-hearted, and people that he didn't know started to follow him and say, you can do it, I believe in you, I'm praying for you. And I think just his mindset let him experience a miracle. I feel like God worked in his life to heal him from that, because he started with his head and his heart, and then he healed his body. So it was really beautiful to see that. And unfortunately, his cancer came back the way that I remember it as my mom told me. He declined a surgery when he became 95% free. There was a procedure that was supposed to happen to remove the remainder of the cancer, and he was, I like to say, kind of big-headed. He always used to be big-headed, and he said, I don't need this, I'm better now. So his cancer came back, and he ended up passing away in February of the next year.
Which year?
In 2020, right before the shutdown.
Pandemic hit, in March. I see.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that he is very happy seeing you pursue your dreams and your ambitions, and I'm really happy that you're pursuing what feels very close to you, to your heart?